The arrest of 26-year-old Luigi Mangione at McDonald's in Altoona, Pennsylvania, has set off a firestorm of reaction connected to the murder of UnitedHealthcare CEO Brian Thompson. Thompson was shot and killed on his way into an investors meeting in New York City, and investigators say it was Mangione, who traveled to New York, stayed in a hostel, then after stopping at Starbucks, shot the UnitedHealthcare CEO in cold blood, then jumped on a bike, took a cab, and hopped on a bus out of New York. After 6 days on the lam, he was spotted by a McDonald's employee in Altoona, Pennsylvania. Police investigated, and Mangione was arrested by a rookie police officer. Today, he was in court in Pennsylvania as authorities in New York attempt to extradite him back to New York to face second-degree murder charges. Tonight, we have all the latest in the investigation and video of Mangione screaming on his way into court as we continue our investigation of the murder of UnitedHealthcare CEO Brian Thompson.
I'm Vinnie Politan. Thank you so much for joining us tonight here on Closing Arguments and our continuing coverage of the biggest true crime story in America right now. We're talking about Brian Thompson, who was murdered. It was cold-blooded murder. It was premeditated murder. This was an assassination. And regardless of what you think about the healthcare system, health insurance, etc., this is murder. That's what I saw on the video. There's no justification for it. Justifiable homicide in this country is self-defense or defense of others. That's not what's happening. That's not what's happening in that video. It's a man walking down the street, shot from behind by an assassin/coward. That's what I saw in the video. We'll see what the jury sees. The suspect here left a trail of clues. The biggest one, this moment right here. This is the moment where he let his guard down, or his mask down, literally. Going straight to his ego because apparently he was flirting with someone at the hostel. Like, he took great care to keep that mask up all through the day of the assassination. You saw the pictures of him in the cab on the way out of town. You saw or heard people describing him eating with the mask on, not letting his identity be known. But if someone's going to flirt with him, he's got to take the moment to show off his amazing smile. And it was that amazing smile that someone else saw at a McDonald's, where he was arrested eating a hash brown. Well, he's not necessarily smiling. Think about this for a moment. If, in fact, this is the killer, and if, in fact, a jury agrees, this is his last moment of freedom. Right here. That's what you're looking at. His last moment of freedom. He's eating a hash brown at McDonald's. No knock on McDonald's and hash browns, but for someone who grew up with the level of life and privilege that this kid did, sort of ironic that his last moment of freedom is eating a hash brown alone in McDonald's. Now, what we saw today as he went back to court was someone who was unhinged outside of that courthouse. There was anger. I don't know if there's mental illness associated with it. I mean, that may very well be the case in all of this. I've been saying it from the beginning. I don't think this is a case where the defense is going to say somebody else did it, or you don't have the evidence to prove it and we just don't know who is responsible. I think it's really going to be a focus on what is taking place between his ears, what was happening in his life. And that's part of what we're going to talk about this hour in our coverage of all this. But I want to begin with this unhinged behavior outside of court. He was being brought in. It was an extradition hearing. And let's take a look and a listen to the accused killer as he's going into court.
What are you going to do? And it's completely out of touch. And it's an insult to the intelligence of the American people and the lived experience.
Unhinged is the only way I can describe it. And to me, it again tells you about what's going on in his mind. Or the wrong guy's been arrested. They've arrested an innocent man, and maybe that's the way an innocent man would act if he's been arrested for something he didn't do. Possibly. But based upon what investigators said they found when they arrested him, could be a problem. Let's take one more look at it.
Luigi, do it. And it's completely out of touch. And it's insult the intelligence of the American people and the lived experience.
Now, it might have been a little bit difficult to understand exactly what he was saying. I want to put that up on the screen for you so you can see exactly the words that were uttered by Luigi Mangione. It is completely out of touch and an insult to the intelligence of the American people and its lived experience. Okay. Makes no sense to me. I mean, you were the valedictorian. You could be a little bit clearer if you're trying to communicate some sort of message to the world, because that doesn't mean anything to me. Maybe it means something to someone. But maybe we need a little bit of analysis of what we just saw. Joining me, retired police commander, host of the podcast Profiling Evil, and author of the book Deceived, Mike King is with us. All right, Mike, your thought, your interpretation of this defendant, like this is his first big public moment, and we see the way he's, gravitating to the press that is there, trying to get his message out. What are your thoughts? What did you see? What did you hear?
Yeah, what I heard is a defiant young man who appears to be trying to maintain this role of a vigilante and the savior of this group of people who are angry about the healthcare industry or corporate greed or whatever. And I think that the manifesto, Vinnie, is teaching us a lot about what he was thinking. And now we're seeing in the violence that occurred and in the personality that he's got a legacy he's working on here, and he's got to come across as a powerful servant of all things evil in his mind.
Yeah, making himself big, right? I think there's and I had Dr. Gary Brucato on talking about potential narcissism driving part of this, wanting to make yourself important. You've been gifted everything in your life. I mean, your family is worth lots of money. You go to the best schools, the best colleges, get the degrees. You're living in Hawaii, for goodness sake. Okay, you mentioned the so-called manifesto, and I think the way it goes, he had something on his person, and that tells, before we get into what it says, if he's carrying that with him, does that tell you that he wants to get that message out to the world, that he knew he would be caught? Or do you think it's something he wrote while he was on the lam?
That's what I've been wondering too, Vinny, is if this guy wrote this as he's been traveling on the bus or whatever he used as that means of transportation to get that 300 miles southeast of New York City. But the thing that's so interesting about that is he's packing it around. He's probably reading it, reciting it in his mind, reinforcing in his mind that he did the right thing, that again, he's this vigilante agent of change that's out there. And it's doing nothing more than supporting him in something that probably, I would hope, a little piece of his conscience, if in fact he's the killer, is saying, what on earth did you do? But then he refers back to that notice of that feeling he's got. He looks at all the anger that he's had and the resentment, the rejection, whatever's led up to this moment in time when he snaps, and he uses that to justify what he's done.
All right, let's get to some of what we've seen from this manifesto. A couple quotes here. To the feds, I'll keep this short because I do respect what you do for our country. To save you a lengthy investigation, I state plainly that I wasn't working with anyone. Well, that's partly a confession right there. That's going to be used against him, by the way, folks. But I wasn't working with anyone. And then he says, I do apologize for any strife or traumas, but it had to be done. Frankly, these parasites simply had it coming. Again, could be interpreted as a confession here. But let's start with wasn't working with anyone. What does your gut tell you, Mike?
Well, I still go back to the fact that early morning hour, he's walking down the street and he's talking to someone at 6:30 in the morning on that mobile phone, or at least appears to. So he may be aware that there are cameras there. I think he certainly rehearsed the route that he took. I think he fantasized about every part of this thing and probably practiced it over and again for those 10 days leading up to this event. And so the question that keeps bugging me is, was there really a phone call? And the forensics are going to tell us that. If there's some call on that phone, we need to know who he's talking to and why he's talking to him. How does he end up at that exact moment in time, pacing back and forth or whatever, but at that moment in time when Brian Thompson walks out and is meandering his way over to the Hilton?
Now, another part of this, talking about these parasites simply had it coming. Are you interpreting that as UnitedHealthcare Group and its leader, or do you see it as perhaps there may have been more targets in his mind, since he did retain the alleged murder weapon with him?
Yeah, I've been thinking about that weapon as well. Number one, I think probably it's part of the artist's artwork. He probably has something to do with the creation of that personally manufactured firearm or ghost gun, and so was he hanging on to it because it was something he created and then accomplished this fantasy that he had with, so it holds almost that trophy kind of sense of accomplishment like we see with serial predators, but or is it truly that he's looking at someone else as the next target in line? I find it offensive that he, on one hand, says, I'm sorry that all this had to happen and people's lives were hurt, but these people are parasites. I mean, that is so frustrating. And to me, it's personalized, not about corporate America.
All right, Mike King, stand by. Let's bring in our think tank. Joining me tonight, trial attorney, former police lieutenant Rick King. Also joining us, criminal defense attorney that is Los Angeles County Deputy Public Defender Philip Dubé. And also joining us, that is criminal defense attorney Rachel Kaufman. Great to see everyone tonight. Thanks for being here. Okay, let's talk about, all right, he's wild outside of the courtroom, and then he goes into the courtroom. Here are the charges in Pennsylvania: forgery, tampering with records of identification, possessing instruments of a crime, false identification to law enforcement. Pleaded not guilty to those charges, but the more important charges obviously coming out of New York, which are murder in the second degree, criminal possession of a weapon in the second degree, criminal possession of a forged instrument in the second degree. So, Rick King, he's fighting extradition. Apparently, didn't throw in the towel right away. That's great. That's just going to run up your legal bill because you're going to get extradited, right?
Yeah, that's all that's going to do it. In terms of extradition, what happens is ultimately, if they have probable cause for an arrest and they file the proper paperwork for extradition, you're going to get extradited. I mean, the state seeking the body has 30 days to come down and get you, and if you don't come and get you, then you get 60 more days, even if that doesn't take place. So ultimately, you're going to end up in New York.
Yeah, they're ready to take him too. I want to take a listen here. We've got Tom Dickey on News Nation, his attorney speaking, and apparently this guy is like, when you go to this part of the country, in Altoona area, he's the go-to guy. Let's take a listen.
I haven't seen any evidence that says that he's the shooter. So that's, like I said earlier, and I wasn't kidding around. A couple of things. If you're going to report something, report it accurately. And remember, and this is not just a small thing, the fundamental concept of American justice is a presumption of innocence. And until you're proven guilty beyond a reasonable doubt, and I've seen zero evidence at this point, and so I'm not even aware of what any charges. They haven't even had a prima facie case established yet, so they have to have a prima facie case established before they can the case can move on to the Court of Common Pleas. So the burden's always on the government, thank God, and that's their burden, and they're going to have to produce some evidence, and we're anxious to see it.
Rachel Kaufman, we don't just have a prima facie, we got his face up. We got his face right on the video. That's prima facie.
We have his face, we have his manifesto, we have the same fake ID that he used at the hostel. It's still in his bag. We have the suspected weapon. I mean, I understand, you know, as a criminal defense attorney, I understand the need to remind the American people that, you know, people are presumed innocent, but to suggest that there is no evidence is a little silly.
Well, I don't think
given what we've all known.
It was very careful wording, Philip Dubé. It wasn't that there is no evidence. I haven't seen it, right?
Yeah.
Because he doesn't work for the police, so he hasn't seen it. He's just maybe he's heard about it, but he hasn't actually seen it.
Yeah, I mean, for all we know, he could just be a fan of the shooter, you know, without some hardcore evidence that he, in fact, was the one out on that street in front of the hotel with that silencer. Right now, all you really have is just sort of like Slender Man, some Phantom of the Opera type image from afar. You know, there's really no way to see the contours of the face, the skull, the facial features, all of that stuff. All you really have is just some silhouette of a shooter. So to be fair to counsel, he has a point thus far, but this is a classic example of why I would not be giving a presser like this until all the evidence is in, because once the more solidifying, crystallized evidence starts coming in, he could end up looking like a buffoon.
Yeah, I mean, he's got a long history there, is my understanding, and has been very successful, long career. But Rick King, you know, I'm trying to figure this all out, because in most cases, like, we have no murder weapon. They've got what they believe is the murder weapon. They're going to be able to do ballistics on that, right? I know it's a ghost gun, but it still has the barrel that you're going to do the ballistics on.
Right. I think that you all have really laid it out perfectly. And what really the deal is that counsel for that gentleman, Mr. Mangione, he said, hey, well, just what you said, I haven't seen it. Now, that doesn't mean it doesn't exist. That doesn't mean that they don't have the gun, they don't have the manifesto, they don't have the words that he wrote, they don't have the photo of him smiling brightly for the camera. And what you don't see is, if they have that photo of him at the hostel, then they're tracking his movements, and they're tracking him, that photo of him from the hostel to where he ended up conducting this murder. So I think there's a lot more to what law enforcement has. And you have to always believe that law enforcement is going to give you enough to let you see, but not give you everything right now.
Yeah, Rachel Kaufman, as I go down the checklist of what we believe and what investigators have led us to believe that they have, right? So you've got the video surveillance, right? You've got a wrapper and a bottle that he left at the Starbucks where he's seen on video, so you could have DNA. You've got the murder weapon, so you may have a ballistics match to that as well. You've got the manifesto, which, depending upon how you interpret it, is basically at least a partial confession, right? So that you've got direct evidence, which is the video. You've got direct evidence, which is the manifesto. So this isn't a case that is based on solely circumstantial evidence. I mean, you've got it. I've never seen anything quite like what you have right here. And go ahead.
You seem to have an individual who eventually, whether he wanted to be caught at that McDonald's or a few days later, wants to be the face of this vigilante movement that there may be others involved, but that he doesn't feel like anyone's really taken this step yet. We also have the book bag in Central Park that had the money in it. I'm not sure.
Oh, that's right. I forgot about the book bag.
I don't know what else they're going to get from that. Yeah, but there's that, and then there's this whole thing about him having a very serious back injury.
Oh, we'll get to that. Don't worry. We'll get to that.
And then his family was looking for him, so he's definitely in the past month or two just kind of gone off the deep end. And so all signs point to this being. He wants to tell everyone, I think this was me.
Yeah.
Which is horrible for a defense attorney trying to defend it.
Philip Dubé, I think, I don't think there's a complete mental defense to this, but don't you think that's going to be the issue? I think if we go to trial, I can't imagine a lawyer's going to stand up in a courtroom in New York and say, you've got the wrong guy. If this stuff matches, if the DNA and the ballistics match, right? I don't think there's any way you're going to have a lawyer saying somebody else did it, or they just haven't proven this beyond a reasonable doubt. I think they've got to get inside his head.
It depends. You never know. He might be able to produce an alibi. If he can bring in several people to put him somewhere else at the time of that shooting, that is a straight up defense. I mean, seriously,
maybe he was driving around looking at the stars with that guy from Idaho.
Contemplating his navel. I'm just saying, you know, it doesn't mean it's a winner, but at least it's something to say. A mental defense will not work in this particular case because of the sophisticated planning that was involved, his agenda in wanting to end this man's life. This was so clearly thought out, sophisticated, planned.
Well, what if he thought he was saving the world as a social justice avenger, saving people from the evils of UnitedHealthcare?
Well, it might have been great under divine law if you were Joan of Arc, but here at modern law, when you're charged, okay, but here at modern law in the state of New York, when you pull out a silencer and you blow somebody away in the back, you're going down. I mean, seriously, it doesn't matter who you think you're trying to save unless you really have some evidence that you are defending some third party from imminent peril. But absent that, he needs to prepare to surrender.
Yeah, I was thinking more of a break from reality, like he didn't know what was right and what was wrong at the time, but he did flee. All right, Think Tank staying with us. When we come back, we're going to take a look at what Rachel was talking about, which is the spine condition that this defendant allegedly suffers from. We'll take a look at that. We'll bring in an expert to figure out what it's all about. Plus, coming up next hour.
Tonight on Vinnie Politan Investigates, hip-hop legend Beyonce's husband Jay-Z has been sued in civil court, accused of sexually assaulting a minor along with Sean Diddy Combs. Jay-Z denies the allegations, and tonight we investigate.
Join Court TV's Vinnie Politan with the latest and breaking true crime stories.
Now, let's look at the other side of all of that.
Vinnie Politan Investigates, tonight, 9/8 Central, only on Court TV.
A mystery in the Deep South.
An Ole Miss student goes missing. Now a graduate stands trial for his murder.
We'll take you inside the case that shocked the college community.
The missing student murder trial. Live coverage weekday mornings on Court TV.
Some attention in this case, especially online, has been deeply disturbing, as some have looked to celebrate instead of condemning this killer. Brian Thompson was a father to two. He was a husband, and he was a friend to many. And yes, he was the CEO of a health insurance company. In America, we do not kill people in cold blood to resolve policy differences or express a viewpoint.
Exactly, and that's the governor of Pennsylvania right there. Let's talk about Luigi Mangione. It seems he moved to Hawaii, right? Life was pretty good for this kid. Growing up and then had a good job and then moved to Hawaii. This is January to June of 2022. Moves into a place called Surf Break Co-Living. $2,000 a month. Beachside property for people who were doing remote work. While he's there, he spent a lot of time physical fitness, doing yoga, and ran the book club. Like, life is good. Life is really good. Let's bring in our guest, still with us, retired police commander Mike King, and joining us, board-certified orthopedic spine surgeon at his practice, the Spine Pro in Beverly Hills, California, Dr. Houman Melamed. Dr. Melamed, great to have you here. Great to see you tonight. I want to go through a little bit of the history because a lot of people have been talking about his back condition. And I'm going to walk you through it. Luigi Mangione takes a surfing class and injures his back. He aggravated his, now I don't know how to say this word, but it's his spondylolisthesis, a condition he'd been dealing with since his childhood. The incident left him in bed for a week. In an alleged Reddit account, he later described the incident. He said, "My back and hips locked up after the accident. Intermittent numbness has become constant. I'm terrified of the implications." His friend and founder of Surf Break spoke to CNN and described the condition. His spine was kind of misaligned. He said his lower vertebrae were almost like half an inch off, and I think it pinched a nerve. It was really traumatic and difficult, you know, when you're in your early 20s and you can't do some basic things. He knew that dating and being physically intimate with his back condition wasn't possible. I remember him telling me that, and my heart just breaks. Then, Mangione apparently had some back surgery. He flew back to the mainland for the surgery, and there's been some reports that it didn't really go very well. A source from his high school described this surgery to Barstool and said the back surgery changed everything for him, and he went absolutely crazy. And that's an image that we're looking at that he posted on his Twitter account. So, giving you that information, what can you tell us, Dr. Melamed, about his condition, the level of pain, and what could have been done for him, and what you think happened as a result of this surgery?
So it's thank you very much for having me. So it's always easy to play the Monday morning quarterback, and I think we don't have all of the facts yet. But from everything you've described to me so far, what you've said, he had what we call a slip vertebrae, where one vertebrae is slipping off on top of another vertebrae, and that is not an easy operation to do it properly. You have to take your time to do it properly, and just looking at the x-rays, having been doing this for 20 years, the x-rays don't look good. The surgery, unfortunately, I don't think was done properly. One of the screws, the last screw at the bottom, you can see it's pretty long. It's sticking out. Whether that's irritating a nerve or not, I don't know. We need other images. One of the screws, the top screw, possibly maybe violating the disc space, which is not good. And then, worst of all, the bone-on-bone collapse that he had with the slip vertebrae, that unfortunately was never fixed. And I wouldn't be surprised if Luigi was in persistent numbness or shooting pain down his leg, or if he had weakness, or he had chronic back pain and the bone did not fuse. I wouldn't be surprised that the basically clouded his judgment. And I know, I've had patients, unfortunately, I know who've committed suicide because of unbearable pain, and they knew the outcome is bad. They either were denied surgery or had a bad surgery and ruined their life.
Dr. Melamed, as we think about what he's going through, at a young age, this is all happening, and it is a condition apparently that he had his whole life, and then there was this incident with the surfing. Is it anything that could have been corrected down the road with maybe a second surgery or some other type of intervention? That's one question. And then the follow-up, in terms of the pain, is there any way to manage that? Because we know, we've been hearing, opioids and all the potential problems with that as being a completely separate issue. What are your thoughts about the pain management?
So to answer your first question, yes, a revision surgery most likely could have been done, and if done properly, could have been successful. About almost 30 to 40% of my practice is composed, unfortunately, of revision surgeries where I am, I hate to say it, but patients have had prior surgery by somebody else, and I have to revise it and fix it. It requires meticulous, and in his age, I think could have been done properly. The second question about the pain, I personally have been completely trying to be narcotic-free since March of 2018. For almost 7 years, I've been narcotic-free. And I think the dark pathway, I'm sure all the law enforcement can comment, is that this narcotic, given patients get narcotics and they become addicted, it really goes into this dark pathway that can ruin somebody's life, and they can make all kinds of bad decisions. They can snap, all kinds of stuff, psychological stuff can come out of it. And I don't believe in a pain management with just narcotics. I think if you have a mechanical problem, you should try to fix it and coach the patient psychologically that narcotics are not going to help you. We can try physical therapy, massage, laser therapy, cold therapy, cold plunge therapy. There's a lot of other modalities you can use, what I call multimodal pain management, holistic pain management. Use food as medication, anti-inflammatory diet, use fish oil, turmeric, natural anti-inflammatory supplements. When you really focus on the patient as a whole, you try to help them that way to manage the pain until they can get the corrective surgery done.
All right, Mike King, I want to turn to you now. Are you shocked, if in fact he's the killer, right? If he's the killer, that he's going after UnitedHealthcare, right? He's suffering back pain, I get it, but it seems like potentially a botched surgery, potentially a condition he was born with, and yet it seems to be manifesting itself towards the health insurance industry here. What are your thoughts about putting those pieces together in profiling this alleged killer?
Well, I really appreciate sharing time with the doc on this one, because we have to look at what motivates someone to commit a crime like this and to have such a shift in their personality and the way they go about life. I mean, he was a pretty fun-loving person from all the reports prior to the last year or so. But we know that he was working for a company in California that probably had health care coverage, Vinny. I looked into that company. UnitedHealthcare isn't listed on that company, but we know since 23, he's not been working for that company, been in Hawaii. So did he revert back to his parents' coverage? So the question I have is, were his parents covered by UnitedHealthcare in this particular case? And then second to that is because he just turned 26 in May, and the Affordable Health Care Act would have removed him from dependent coverage. Was he having trouble with coverage? And he shouldn't have been having trouble with pre-existing conditions. But I really appreciated the doc giving us information about what would have happened medically, because the question I have as an investigator was, by all accounts, he didn't have any pain medications with him when he was arrested. There's no indication that he was having a hard time moving when he was firing those shots and cycling that weapon and reacting so smoothly. I'm not discounting at all that he probably has serious back pain. We don't even know if that's really his imagery from what I've been able to see on public records, but of a back surgery. But all of those things make me say, is the behavior matching up with the diagnoses? And if he was in that much pain, would he have been packing meds around or been under the influence? But what a great defense if he is.
Yeah. Mike King, completely unrelated question here, but this image, this original booking photo, I noticed, it looks like he may have wet his pants. I have to ask you, as law enforcement, when people who aren't used to being arrested are arrested, is this common, if in fact that's what happened here?
Yeah, I mean, people get scared and they do some pretty wild things. Again, well, I don't know with the back injury, the doc might be able to answer if there may be incontinency problems associated with the back injury. But it also might be that he was held a long time and his pride or ego or law enforcement didn't give him a chance to get to the bathroom in time.
I got that. Do you think it could at all be related to the back injury, Dr. Molamed?
You know, very rarely. In this case, my first instinct is that probably not. I don't think he would have had that. But, you know, you have to look at all the imaging to be able to comment about it. But usually the type of a problem he had, it's rare to have incontinence issues.
All right, Mike King, thank you so much for your help. And Dr. Molamed, sorry I butchered your name. I may have done it again. My apologies for all that. But thank you so much for joining us, and thank you for helping people with their pain. Back pain is real and it's serious, and thank you so much for the work you do there. All right, when we come back, we're going to focus on the defendant's friends and family. What are they saying tonight?
Following breaking news out of New York City as police are searching for a gunman.
He ignores numerous other pedestrians, approaches the victim from behind, and shoots him in the back.
The person has been taken into custody in Altoona, Pennsylvania in connection to the CEO shooting.
We must do more on the federal level to clamp down on the availability of ghost guns.
It feels good to get a guy like that off the street.
All right, so we're talking about the accused killer, right? Presumed innocent. We all understand the way our system of justice works, especially you folks who watch Court TV. You understand that. What I want to take a look at right now is a former high school classmate joined News Nation and described his former classmate, the accused killer, Luigi. Take a listen.
We were friendly. We weren't in the same social circles, but we're quite friendly with each other. We shared a couple classes. He was everything that you could want in a high school student. He was so driven and smart and athletic, friendly, sociable. It doesn't seem thinkable that this is the same person.
So there's nothing about him that you remember that says, okay, I can kind of see that. Nothing.
No, and I don't remember him being political at all. You could just have a conversation with him, and you really couldn't pick out either direction which way he would lean politically. It just so goes against everything that I knew about Luigi.
Did you follow him at all on social media post-graduation? Like, you know, we all follow people that we went to high school with on Facebook or Instagram. Did you follow him in any red flags that you ever saw online?
I did follow him, and like most guys, he posts once a year or so, and that was consistent with Luigi. There was nothing in his posts over the last 4 years since graduation to college, certainly, that indicated anything was off. The theme is just generally shock. Most of us can't believe it. I thought it was a joke at first when my friend first sent the message to a group chat, but just reading into it, we're even trying to piece things together. Like, do you remember him doing anything like this, similar to what you and I have been talking about just now? And none of us can come up with any leads or any history of inclination to do something like this. Yeah. It's just total shock out of left field.
The perfect high school student, right? And then goes to college and seemingly does very, very well in college as well, getting all of those engineering degrees. Take a look at this, because his mother apparently reported him missing. This is according to reporting from the San Francisco Standard. Luigi Mangione was reported missing last month. His mother, Kathleen, made the report to the San Francisco Police Department November 18th. It wasn't immediately clear whether Mangione had been in San Francisco or if his mother had reason to believe he was. So it seems at that point, he's off the grid. He's off the grid. He's got all this back pain. Things are seemingly unraveling a little bit in his life. Let's bring back in our think tank, Rick King, Rachel Kaufman, Philip Dubé with us. Rachel, let's get back to your point, right? The point about the back pain. How does the back pain and sort of going off the grid, a manifesto, how does that turn into some explanation to a jury? Or do you just have to say it wasn't him?
Well, I'm somebody that likes to deal with the truth. I think, as we've seen in social media responses to the situation, you know, there are a lot of people that do sympathize with his, extreme vigilante behavior. To me, I think to myself, he's clearly privileged enough to not have to worry about his own medical bills, but he seems to care about the world and how things operate. And so after his own botched surgery and the pain that he was in, you know, I can understand that he could possibly start researching or, you know, kind of going into a deep dive about the healthcare industry. And a lot of us agree with him. I mean, in theory, that there is something really wrong with our healthcare industry. Where I think the shock comes in is that you have somebody who really could have made change slowly and steadily within the healthcare industry. If he wanted to become a CEO and make those changes, he could have done that. To think that he thought that, assuming that he is the person that did this for a second, assassinating a CEO of a big health insurance company, long term, I'm not sure where his, for a smart kid, where he thinks this is going to go. That CEO is going to get replaced.
I almost look at it this way, Philip Dubé. I'm interpreting him a little differently. I'm interpreting a kid that had a very privileged life. Nothing wrong with that. His grandfather worked very hard to build a life here in this country and built generational wealth. And he had everything. He's good looking, right? He's athletic. He's smart. He's rich. And then finally something goes wrong in his life and he can't handle it. If I'm the prosecutor, that's what I'm saying. He just got miserable and he had to blame someone for his own pain. How about that, Philip?
Well, except under New York law, he just might qualify for a diminished capacity type defense. if he can show that this chronic pain in his neck and his spine, this structural sort of defect, if you will, caused some type of mental defect or mental disorder that affected his ability to form the intent to kill, that will downgrade the crime from murder to manslaughter under New York law. The problem is, though, that they're going to have to find an expert to say that diminished capacity can be shown to a jury based on chronic pain that caused a mental defect.
Let me do this, Philip. I don't want to run.
It's going to be rough.
I'm up against a break. I just want to give Rick the final word here before we run out. You got like 20 seconds, Rick.
So I'm still with some other dude did it. I like Philip DeBay's answer the first time he spoke about this. We're not sure he did it. We're not sure based on these images. Can they put a timeline together? I think the best defense right now is some other dude did it.
Rick King, Rachel Kaufman, Philip Dubé, thank you so much for helping us out tonight. When we come back, something else you need to know tonight, plus coming up next hour. Tonight on Vinnie Politan investigates explosive new allegations against hip-hop legend and husband of Beyonce, Jay-Z. A new civil suit accuses him of sexually assaulting a minor along with his friend Diddy. Jay-Z denies the claims, and tonight we investigate.
Join Court TV's Vinnie Politan with the latest and breaking true crime stories.
Now, let's look at the other side of all of that.
Vinnie Politan investigates. Coming up next, only on Court TV.
Delivery.
Welcome back. Time to reveal something else you need to know tonight. Let's take a look at the big board. And tonight, sentenced to 26 years. Who is this guy? Diablo Redden. He is the so-called judge jumper. Remember this? Yeah, that cost him 26 to 65 years in prison. He spoke today. Let's take a listen.
I don't understand why the state is really going after my character. I mean, I've always had problems since I was a little kid of psychosis and being in big crowds and always feel like my life is in danger. I didn't know, being a young person, even in middle school, elementary school, knowing that I fear for my safety. I'm just being me, going to school, growing up, trying to do the right things. I never get tired of trying to do the right things. The state just said that I have no remorse. I feel like Judge Johnson, she doesn't know me. I understand she's doing her job. I'm not mad at her for that, but I know that I'm not a bad person. And I'm thinking, even she knows that, but I'm sitting here she's doing her job, you know? And I believe that you all know that I'm not a bad person. I'm not an evil person.
Okay, so now we know why he got 26 to 65 years. He's not helping himself opening his mouth, but his actions inside the courtroom go beyond anything. This would have been a murder case if the judge did not get the help that she got from her law clerk and bailiff. All right, folks, take a look at your screens. We have a missing child tonight, 16 years old. This is China Morgan. China Morgan, 16, missing from Fort Worth, Texas, since December 5th of this year. Take a look at the picture. So if you see her and recognize her, make the call, make a difference. You can call 911, you can call 1-800-THE-LOST, or you can call the Fort Worth Police Department in Texas. That phone number is on your screen right now. Let's see if we can get China to a safe place tonight. Don't go anywhere. We've got another hour of live true crime straight ahead as we dive into the new allegations against Jay-Z. In the meantime, please don't forget to hug the kids.